Here.
Councilmember Madison,
Here.
Councilmember Masuda,
Here.
Councilmember Rivas,
Here.
Councilmember Williams,
Here.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Here.
Mayor Gordo.
Here.
There's a quorum of the council present.
That brings us to item 13, and this is a public hearing.
So let me open the public hearing. So this is the time and place for the public hearing on the appeal of the Board of Zoning Appeals decision on modification to conditional use permit number 6222 regarding the properties located at 3420 and 3500 North Arroyo Boulevard, the Arroyo Seco Canyon project. The publication was not required. However, 66 notices were posted on May 24th, 2021, and 376 notices were mailed on May 21, 2021. The city clerk's office received 87 letters stating opposition, expressing concerns, and/or providing suggestions regarding the Arroyo Seco Canyon project, as well as a, quote, Pasadena water petition containing approximately 1,168 signatures, citing concerns with the project and its detrimental impacts on the habitat, wildlife, and water resources, and urging the city to protect the natural character of the Arroyo Seco Canyon. There was one letter received stating support for the proposed project, as well as providing suggestions. The correspondence was received, distributed to the City Council, posted online, and made part of the official record for tonight's item. In terms of the process for tonight, excuse me while I get the public hearing procedure. We've opened the public hearing. There will be a staff presentation followed by an applicant presentation. The staff presentation is 3 to 5 minutes. Applicant presentation is 12 to 15 minutes. City Council questions on the staff and applicant presentations. Then the appellants will have a presentation for 12 to 15 minutes. The City Council have questions on that. We will take public comment on the item. The appellant will have a rebuttal closing statement for 3 to 5 minutes, and the applicant will have a rebuttal closing statement for 3 to 5 minutes. The public hearing will then be closed, and the City Council deliberations and decision on this item will occur unless the council decides to continue the public hearing.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, and we'll turn it over to the city manager. I see Mitch and Mr. Bawa are here, and your respective staffs, and I just want to thank you for all the work that you put into this. You've handled this matter very ably, Mitch and Mr. Bawa, and thank you for doing that.
And Mayor, while the city staff comes to the lectern, I believe it's the planning department that comes first, but maybe I'm wrong. We are bringing in a number of city staff members and or the appellants into the Zoom meeting.
Mr. Clerk, you're right. Typically, the planning department would give a brief presentation, but we thought it's appropriate.
Just 1 minute, Mayor. You can barely hear the speaker.
Sorry, Mr. Kennedy, I'll take off my mask briefly. Maybe you can hear me better. The city clerk had mentioned that typically for these matters, it starts off with the planning department doing a little presentation on what the project is, but excuse me, we thought it's really appropriate for Mitch, Dion, and Gucharan Bawa of the Water and Power Department to talk about what this project is and how it really furthers the city's environmental goals and helps address the challenges associated with the Raymond Basin. There's been a lot of information put out there that's not accurate, and so staff is pleased to be able to correct the record this evening. With that, I'll turn to Mitch Dion.
Mitch?
Greetings, Mayor, and respected City Council members. I am Mitch Dion, the Assistant General Manager for Pasadena Water and Power for Water. You know, sometimes everything that's old is new again, and I got to tell you, before the days of cheap imported water, our forefathers knew the value of water on this arid coastal plain. So they purchased the watershed to protect and produce water. This hearing is about the appeal of an EIR certification process for the Arroyo Seco Canyon project in accordance with the city protocols and the California Environmental Quality Act. We're at a bit of a disadvantage. We have a set of facts, and we can't change them to fit the narrative. The EIR has been reviewed and approved by both the hearing officer and the Board of Zoning Appeals, where all the same arguments were made and the conclusions were drawn. This is an environmentally protective project. It enhances the groundwater basin, increases the potential for the survival of fish in the arroyo. The proposed project is far better for the environment, the groundwater basin, and for fish than the existing condition, and it also produces options for additional operations. This project is the repair of a stormwater capture and groundwater augmentation facility using engineered natural systems. The additional water to be captured is focused on the high flows, which currently go over Devil Gate Dam, enter a concrete channel, and are lost to the ocean. Moreover, all the water we're discussing is within the city of Pasadena's current and historic water right. Much of the discussion will be about fish. Well, upon certification of this EIR, we'll initiate the application to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. They reviewed this EIR, they made some comments, but until they get the application, it's all speculative. In consideration of the policy direction of the governor, climate change implications for less imported water that are staring us in the face, reduced dependency upon imported water is mandated. And this project is an important first step in restoring or healing the basin. So I will be followed by a professional engineer, Natalie Ouwersloot, with a team of experts. And so let me point out the team of experts. From DUDEC, we've got Kristen Starbird for CEQA questions. We have Mike Cady for biology. We have Steve Stewart for hydrology, Cam Swift for fisheries, and Gwen Perry of Northwest Hydraulics for the design. So with that, let me turn it over to Natalie.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm very happy and glad for the opportunity to present to you the Arroyo Seco Canyon project and to discuss the facts and benefits of the proposed plans. May I have the presentation, please? It skipped one, sorry. So tonight we are asking Council to approve the EIR and the modified conditional use permit. It is important to stay focused on the project itself, as it is a requirement of CEQA. Although if you bring in the broader topics of drought, climate change, reduction in local groundwater levels, and include the presence of fish, this is the project to support. I will show you these concepts throughout my presentation. The project started approximately a decade ago, and the EIR was prepared following a lawsuit in 2015. The EIR and modified conditional use permit was presented to the hearing officer in January this year, and the Board of Zoning Appeals in March. Both entities approved the project following the same technical information you will hear tonight. And as Mitch mentioned, PWP has been deliberate in creating a team of specialists that include leading technical experts in stormwater capture and water diversion structure design, while enlisting a leading Southern California fisheries specialist for the passage of fish. In addition, our environmental consultant, DUDEC, are renowned engineers, hydrogeologists, and biologists with strong local presence and experience with the arroyo. This team of experts, including your PWP team, has been thorough in their analysis of environmental effects of the project. is committed to improving and enhancing the habitat in the Hahamanga and finds protecting the groundwater basin essential, as this is a water supply of utmost importance to Pasadena. First, I would like to describe the project to you, then the project conditions, then address the appellant's concerns, and finally discuss CEQA requirements. There are only two areas that the project will affect, called Area 2 and Area 3. Area 2 is where the current fixed dam and diversion structure is located, as shown in the photo. The city has water rights from the Arroyo Seco stream of 25 cubic feet per second and has been diverting water continuously for over 100 years. This structure is able to divert low flows and small storms. That baseline condition will not change with the new project. From here, the water is conveyed in pipelines to the infiltration basins about a half mile to the south. The project will replace the diversion dam with a new structure in the same location, but rather than a fixed dam, the new diversion will have an operable gate. This means that the gate will be raised for taking in water and lowered to bypass flows and manage sediment. The design will also include new elements for fish protection with a new fish screen at the intake. Currently, fish are not protected. Another new feature at this location will be a roughened channel designed specifically for fish passage. This slide shows a typical section of a roughened channel using engineered streambed material, which are made of natural materials and is permeable. The engineered part of this feature is that the rock is sized to stay in place under design flow conditions. These features promote fish migration. In April of this year, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife notified me that they planted fish in the Arroyo Seco in November and December of last year. The rainbow trout came from the San Gabriel River as a fish rescue effort following the Bobcat fire. Prior to this, the city, the NOAA, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife all concluded and documented that fish have not been present in the arroyo since the station fire. As the absence of fish was the project condition at the time of the EIR notice of preparation, this information is presented in the EIR, and therefore the EIR remains valid. As you can tell from previous slides, the project was already designed for and can be operated for fish passage. Upon approval and certification of the EIR, PWP will apply for a streambed alteration agreement with Fish and Wildlife. The appellants wish to enforce Fish and Game Code sections 5901 and 5937 on PWP. However, that is under the purview of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Any requests the appellants make may be in conflict with the requirements that Fish and Wildlife will impose on us. We have been working closely and continue to work with Fish and Wildlife, having met with them close to a dozen times. They will ensure we meet government codes in regards to fish condition and passage, as well as require PWP prepare a habitat mitigation and monitoring plan. When the appellants state that the Department of Fish and Wildlife have serious concerns about our project, they do not know we have incorporated all their comments into the EIR, and nor are they aware of our working relationship with them that will continue through permitting. The second area of the project effects is Area 3, where the current infiltration basins are located. This picture shows the parking lot that was removed in 2016 in anticipation of expanding the spreading basins. This next picture shows the dirt area that it currently is. This is how the appellants wish to keep the area. PWP is proposing what you see in this picture, which are infiltration basins with native vegetation and new trails connecting to the existing system. This drawing shows the proposed layout of the infiltration basins and includes a settling basin to manage sediment. The basins will have free-form shapes to look and function more like the natural channel. As part of tonight's approval of the EIR, we are requesting a project alternative, Alternative B, which is a redesign of spreading basins with more natural-looking features and additional trees and vegetation. This will be an improvement for park visitors with shade and habitat. The project conditions are such that they are designed to be able to infiltrate water from very high storm flows. In an average year, PWP currently diverts about 2,000 acre-feet of stormwater, and the project is designed to capture an additional 1,000 acre-feet a year. and we will never divert more than our water rights, 25 cubic feet per second. The picture shown here shows flows of 35 to 45 cubic feet per second, and these are the type of flows that the project benefits from. The ground is already fully saturated, and much of this water is lost past Devil's Gate Dam and out to the ocean. The project does not change baseline conditions of capturing low flows and small storms, which PWP has been diverting for over 100 years. And PWP can pump a portion of the infiltrated water as per adjudicated water rights. This map shows the boundaries of the Raymond groundwater basin, and the existing spreading basins overlie the Monk Hill subarea. Another baseline condition that will not change with the project is that our adjudicated rights allow us to pump 60 to 80% of the water we infiltrate. That means 20 to 40% of the water remains for the benefit of the basin. It is the Raymond Basin Management Board that will prescribe how much water we can extract following infiltration, and it will not be beyond our water rights nor baseline conditions. This chart shown here further describes the project conditions. The red bars are the flows available from the Arroyo Seco stream. The blue bars are the flows that we already capture, and that are the baseline conditions. But the project is designed for the green bars, which are the high storm flows that occur between January and April. Also shown is the purple line, which is the outflow out of Devil's Gate Dam. We see that these outflows peak during the wettest months of the year. By increasing diversions during this same period, we can keep some of this excess water from being wasted to the ocean and use it to recharge the basin, in addition to water that will continue to percolate naturally in the stream bed. By diverting water out of the stream and setting it aside to percolate in spreading basins, we have an opportunity to increase groundwater recharge, even when a portion of that is later pumped for water supply. This slide helps explain why there's so much water leaving Devil's Gate Dam and how the project's increased diversions will keep more water in the basin. On average, the volume of water that flows in the Arroyo Seco in the area of our diversion is just short of 7,000 acre-feet. But currently, the city diverts an average of 2,000 acre-feet a year. The majority of the flows during a storm remain in-stream after diversion, and those flows increase downstream from other contributing sources. These include Millard Creek's subsurface flows, surface runoff, and a number of major storm drains that outlet to the Arroyo Seco. Some of this stream water will percolate in the stream bed, but the stream bed has a limited capacity for percolating all the water when it is fully saturated, allowing flows to continue downstream and accumulate behind Devil's Gate Dam. When this pool of water starts to rise, the county opens the dam and the dam gates to release flows downstream. In fact, there's so much water that flows downstream without percolating that the county releases, on average, over 11,000 acre-feet a year. The appellants continue to talk about changing the baseline condition, or the blue bars, from the graph before, and leaving the water in stream. They also state that the flows represented by the green bars is currently being percolated in stream, but as you can see, this water is being released to the ocean. This table summarizes the multiple improvements from implementing the Arroyo Seco Canyon project. This includes conserving stormwater, renovating our diversion and intake to include new fish screen, removing a fixed barrier and a vertical drop, and adding a roughened channel for fish passage, improving our ability to manage sediment, and adding new habitat to a dirt lot. The project was to be heard by council on June 7th. However, right before the meeting started, the appellants submitted a proposal for a resolution. After meeting with them, we are not able to submit to the actions presented in their proposal. Under CEQA, the impacts of the project must be evaluated by comparing project conditions to baseline conditions. The appellants are suggesting changes to downstream flows and pumping credit allocations. An analysis against a hypothetical baseline does not comply with CEQA. As described, the project is designed to capture high storm and percolation rates in already saturated grounds are not important. The appellants have tried to do a quantitative analysis to show that there's a net loss to the recharge to the Raymond Basin when compared to leaving the water in stream. PWP had a qualified and experienced hydrogeologist review the appellant's analysis and found it is based on several flawed assumptions, and the appellants made mathematical errors. The hydrogeologist found that if the appellant's math error is corrected and the flawed assumptions still kept, the conclusion is that the project nets more water for the Raymond Basin. When completely corrected by the hydrogeologist, the project nets even more water in the basin. Our consultant is available to go over these analyses if you wish. The appellants have appealed the Board of Zoning Appeals approval to the project and state that the project will have detrimental impacts to habitat, wildlife, and water resources. When they state that we have failed to recognize or accommodate fish, they are ignoring the estimated $2 million in improvements we are making for fish protection and passage described earlier in the presentation. When they state we refuse to conduct studies for new water, they continue to make errors in their calculations and are ignoring the analysis that the project would capture an additional 1,000 acre-feet a year. When they suggest we should not pump our groundwater rights and just purchase more water from MWD, they may not know that the California Code of Regulations now states that we should reduce reliance on the Delta through improved regional self-reliance. When they state the nature of the Hahamunga is being destroyed, they are ignoring the rehabilitation of a 100-year-old dam and converting a dirt lot to basins to capture additional water lost to the ocean and planted with natural habitat and a trail system. When they talk about destructing the natural character of the Hahamunga, they ignore that the new spreading basins meet the goals and designs of the Hahamunga Watershed Park Master Plan, a plan that the appellants advocated for. And when they claim that there is a negative impact to downstream habitat, they ignore the year-long study conducted to analyze how the ecosystem will respond to the project's changes and flows. The study concluded that there are no measurable effects on downstream riparian habitat. But tonight's focus is on approving the EIR. Analysis was completed on the topics listed and determined that all potentially significant impacts can be reduced to less than significant level with mitigation measures. The one exception is to cultural resources, and this is because the city wishes to keep in place a structural overlay, which is a bridge over an unstable bridge that was built in 2016 for Bridge 3 over the Arroyo. This overlay is allowing access into the upper canyon and is used by hikers, bikers, and equestrians, but prevents repair to the original historic bridge. For this reason, the EIR has found this to be a significant and unavoidable impact. To fulfill CEQA's requirements, PWP looked at 3 project alternatives. A is the no project alternative, where the city will not repair the dam, not make improvements for the protection of fish and fish passage, and will not expand the infiltration basins with new trails and vegetation, making way for habitat. High storm flows will continue to be lost to the ocean. Alternative B is the redesign of spreading basins with more natural-looking features and additional trees and vegetation. And alternative C is the historic bridge preservation, and this is the alternative that would eliminate the significant impact to cultural resources. In conclusion, of the alternative, the city chooses to pursue alternative B, the redesign of the basins, but which does not avoid the significant impact to cultural resources. For this reason, a statement of overriding consideration is required for project approval as modified by alternative B. Here we have the conclusion. The Arroyo Seco Canyon project will be a significant stormwater capture project for the region. It will restore a vital tool for groundwater recharge and managing the basin. And it will do so in a way that integrates water management with the management of other resources in the Hahamunga watershed. Thank you, and at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Natalie. Questions and comments before we turn to the applicant presentation? Oh. Is Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kennedy followed by Mr. Madison.
Can we please go back to slide 14?
We're going to bring that up 1 second. There you go.
I'm just want to be clear that the boxes on the right reflect exactly what? Because you have the first box checked. I just want to be clear of my understanding or what you're hoping that we understand.
Sure, that the existing conditions of the how we operate the system now is we divert low and moderate stream flows, which is in the existing, but also how we will operate the new project.
Excuse me, I apologize. To the right of existing is new. Under new, are there boxes that are checked?
Yes,
Oh, I can't see them. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry about that. So the
No, it's not your fault. Let me see if I can get a different view real quick. I better go forward. May I please see
Do you want
page number 15?
15, did you say?
Yes, the very next slide.
Okay.
Okay. What I want to understand is how we measure percolation rates, and also that the appellant is providing, according to your presentation, erroneous hydraulic data, or there is an erroneous hydraulic basis. So if you could just elaborate a bit more so I can understand that.
yes, so at this time I'd like to ask for Steve Stewart, our hydrologist, to answer the questions, if he's available.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, good evening.
Great, we can hear you. Go ahead, Mr. Stewart.
Let's begin with the error in the hydrology analysis. Mr. Kules presented an analysis looking at daily stream flow measured at the gauging station, looking back over a 30-year period from 1989 to 2019, and compiling that information, looking at the existing condition, and then also looking at the proposed project, and then looking at a range of percolation rates that were estimated for the spreading basins adjacent to Arroyo Seco. And so taking the daily information or the gauging stream flow data from the USGS station, which is just upstream of our diversion structure, which is measured in units of cubic feet per second, and then tabulating that information and then reporting it as acre feet in terms of volume. The error was not converting then that cubic feet per second data into acre feet. And so that got carried over into the final conclusion that indicated that there would be a net loss of water on an average annual basis of 400 acre feet per year. When you make that correction and you convert the units appropriately, it actually, the analysis indicates that there would be a net benefit or an increase of about 15 acre feet per year. And so overall, the project then would demonstrate a benefit to the basin. There would be a net gain or recharge to the basin as opposed to a decrease or decline in recharge to the basin as a function of this project.
And when you met with the appellant, based upon their letter dated July 6, 2021, the settlement proposal, was this issue discussed?
Yes, it was.
And what was the outcome of that discussion?
They did recognize that they made an error in their math, considering the hydrology of the area.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was the extent of my questions at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Madison?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to keep an open mind, but, you know, the record in this matter is substantial. And, you know, it took a lot of time to work through. Am I correct that we're appealing or reviewing an appeal from a 5-0 BOZA finding in favor of the applicant? Staff?
Yes, we are.
And how big is the Raymond Basin? Am I correct? It's about 1.4 million thousand acres.
Yes, 1.4 million acre feet total source.
Okay, and we're talking in this project about how much?
An additional 1,000 acre feet.
Out of
Per year.
1.4 million.
Yes.
And my understanding is about 12,000 acre feet a year flow over the dam. That's basically lost in the manner that's described in the material.
That's correct.
So is this consistent, you know, with other efforts that we take under the Integrated Resource Plan and the Hahamunger Master Plan?
Yes, I mean, we are looking at how to capture all this stormwater that goes over the dam in the planning documents.
I mean, isn't diverting water into the basin something we already do, into basins? Something we already do?
Correct. So we currently divert about 2,000 acre feet a year. And so this would be trying to capture an additional 1,000 acre feet of the storm water that's lost.
And Mr. Madison, to further your point, our plan has always consisted of using our local water resources to help offset the amount of purchased water from Metropolitan Water District, which comes at a much higher premium and cost than our local sources. And so this has always been viewed having local groundwater, and so therefore being able to benefit from local sources is very much consistent with all of our prior planning documents, which you reference.
And I mean, my understanding is we have recharge projects like this, and this is consistent with what's done not only here, but around the state and other efforts, correct?
Yes, that's correct. This is a recharge effort, yes.
And did I read correctly that this is a parking lot that we're going to turn into a water recharge
That's
locus?
correct. Yes, we removed the parking lot, the asphalt of the JPL parking lot in 2016. And it's currently a dirt lot, but that was the goal at that time in anticipation of expanding the spreading basins.
So, you know, I'm really struggling. Again, I want to keep an open mind, but I think the sooner we can get to the appellant, the better, because I'm really struggling with a reason to overturn, you know, the hearing officer and the BOZA finding and the, I don't know, couple of thousand pages of materials that we have here, all of which indicate this is an extremely prudent project. I guess the one thing that gives us all pause is fish, but are these fish, you know, species that naturally occurred in the arroyo?
Yes, the rainbow trout do naturally occur.
But there were other fish that were cited, like steelhead, that I never heard in my life that there were steelhead in the Arroyo Seco.
Well, the definition of a steelhead is a rainbow trout that makes it out to the ocean and then swims back upstream. And so because of Devil's Gate Dam and the concrete channel that's the LA River, we are not able to have steelhead trout in the Arroyo Seco.
Okay. And, you know, I mean, I guess my concern also is as we struggle with, you know, these resources, is whether, you know, what the outlook for any fish in the arroyo are anyway, given the effects of climate change. Will climate change factors affect, you know, efforts to restore this local fish population?
Yes, the drier the seasons, the harder it will be for fish to remain alive in the Arroyo Seco. Right now, about 10% of the time, the Arroyo Seco is completely dry, and about 25% of the time, there's less than 1 cubic feet per second of water stream in the arroyo, and fish need more than that to survive.
So it's also compounded by the water temperature itself. So we're seeing increases in water temperature more frequently and less dissolved oxygen. So the water conditions are less favorable to fish for longer periods of time each year.
And so are these considered natural populations at this point, or should they be considered managed population?
The only fish currently in the arroyo are planted by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
So those are managed populations planted there by the Fish and Game.
That's correct.
Okay, well, I want to keep an open mind, but I think, Mayor, the sooner we can get to the appellant and then dispose of this matter, the better.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Next, we'll turn to Councilmember Williams and then turn to the appellant.
Thanks. I think Councilmember Madison asked a lot of my questions, but just going back to the BZA did a lot of very thorough work on this and looking at their conditions. Where is PWP on the conditions that were imposed by the BZA? It's are those doable? What is your stance on what the BZA's conditions were, the additional conditions? Thanks.
So we are able to work within the conditions that were provided. We certainly would have had a little bit preference in wording, but in general, the term conditions are fine.
Vice Mayor Wilson, do you have some comments or questions?
Yeah, I had a question. Thank you, Mayor. I know we have a hydrologist. Can you remind us what's happened to the groundwater levels in the arroyo in the last 30 years? Does anyone know?
Yes.
Can you describe what's happened?
Yes, so there's, I showed a map of the Raymond Basin in general. We have the Monkgill sub-area. Because of the water quality issues in the Monkgill sub-area with the perchlorate, many of the wells were off, and so there's no real incline or decline shown there specifically. When there's a lot of rain, it's a rainy season, then the levels in the Monkgill sub-area do increase, but in the Pasadena sub-area, they have declined. And the appellants frequently show that graph of the Pasadena sub-area specifically, which shows a steep decline in groundwater levels, which the Raymond Basin Management Board has addressed by having a voluntary reduction of 30% in the Pasadena sub-area. So we do pump less now.
Can I ask hydrologist? I forgot what his name was.
Yes,
Steve.
Steve Stewart.
Steve, in your professional opinion, do you believe the volume or the groundwater levels of the Raymond Basin will continue to decline, or do you think they will start returning based? Let me ask the question differently. What impact will this project have on the groundwater levels in the Arroyo Basin?
This project is a stormwater capture project. It's actually an enhancement of what the project is right now. And so it's a matter of diverting additional flows to the spreading basins, which will then recharge the aquifer below it. While at the same time, still flow is going down the Arroyo Seco, contributing downstream to that. So the net benefit is that there will be increased recharge to the basin as a result of this project.
Including the net effect of the city pumping an additional 1,000 acre feet?
Well, the city has a right to pump, I think, 60 to 80%. They have credits to pump 60 to 80% of the water that they put in the spreading basin that will recharge the basin, the aquifer itself. And as I understand it, those pumping credits, there's nothing about that that's going to change. So it's not going to lead to a deficit, if you will, of recharge to the basin. It's going to leave some water in the basin that does percolate through the spreading basin.
So I guess, I want to go back to the big picture. My concern is that we've heard the need to depend on our local water supply, given, I think, issues and things like the Colorado River, imported water. But we're looking at also the California Water Project. And now we're looking at a Arroyo Basin, which is, I think, one of the primary water supplies for local water, but we're seeing a very dramatic drop in our groundwater levels. So where I'm struggling is that it looks like that resource is being diminished, and we're trying to rely more on that resource. Are we not digging ourselves in a deeper ditch?
If I may,
Yeah.
let me take a shot at this. This project results in a net increase.
Which I heard,
in
which is, it
itself.
was good to hear.
Certainly, we need to do more. We need many more projects that will do enhancements to the groundwater basin. But this is a first step in the kind of projects that we do need in order to make the groundwater basin and manage it in a sustainable fashion. Then we could talk about recovery. And there's a difference between what's necessary to manage sustainably and ultimately what you would probably try to do if you're actually trying to restore those basins. And so the first techniques, though, to do sustainable basin management is to capture as much of the stormwater as we can. Even with this project, there's still, on average, 10,000 acre feet going over the dam every year. We really ought to be trying to capture as much as that as well. And those are the techniques that will be used with the crosstown conduit, the pump back project, and many other concepts that have been discussed for many years. And it's a matter of implementing those. But this project is the first step and results in a net increase in the basin.
Mitch, how much water do you think went over the Devil's Gate Dam this last season, rainy season, wet season?
Do we have that number? I think we talked about, okay, we don't have that number.
Did any water go over Devil's Gate this year?
Yes.
It did?
Oh, yes, there was water that was running over Devil's Gate, even just a little bit of rain we had back in April. In fact, when the hearing officer first heard this, that very day, there was water going over the dam.
Okay, and the other question I had is, can you remind us what the budget is for this project?
The program estimate for this is around $14 million.
$14 million bucks. And this is going to get us, I think, remember, an extra 1,000 acre feet. And I know this approval is really not funding the project. Am I correct? That's a separate aspect of this project. When you think about the and we'll see this in the WSRP, right? Kind of here's all the projects, here's the budget. I guess maybe as a preview, do you think $14 million, given the return on investment, is a good use of the ratepayers' dollars?
Well, in this case, return on investment may not be the kind of formula that you want to use, but in net, in rough terms, there's about an $800,000 annual cost avoidance if this project was actually operating the way it should be. So you got to pay back in a formula I wouldn't use for 12 years. Not too bad.
Okay, thank you, Mitch. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. I think that completes questions. Thank you, Natalie, Mitch. Next, we'll turn to the appellant for a 12 to 15-minute presentation. I see we have Mr. Brick.
We have Ken Kules, Tim Brick, and maybe Hugh Bowles as well. So if you want to turn on your cameras and unmute your microphones.
This is Tim Brick, the host that stopped my camera.
Oh, hold on one second, Mr. Brick. And could you let us know who would be going first, second, and third, and what?
I'm going I'm going first, as I told you, and Ken Kules is going to follow me, and then Hugh Bowles is going to speak as well.
Thank you, Mr. Brick. And again, I want to thank you, Mr. Brick, and the other appellant members for having gracefully agreed to continue the matter from last week to today. Mr. Brick?
Well, thank you, Mayor Gordo, and we're very pleased to be here because we've been dealing with this issue for 2 years, basically, and getting very little response. Regrettably, the Water and Power Department has been not responsive, but defensive about every step, every argument, or every point, every concern that's been raised. I do have some slides. Can we get the slides going, please?
Yeah, we're going to pull those up right now. We just, 1 second.
All right. I want to say that I'm representing the Arroyo Seco Foundation here today, which played a key role in initiating this project 15 years ago, but is very disappointed with the environmental improvements that we sought that have been left out of the program and greatly exaggerated by the previous presentation. I'm also representing, in addition to the Arroyo Seco Foundation, the Pasadena Audubon Society, and then following me will be Ken Kules and Hugh Bowles, who are two individuals who have joined us in this appeal. So the basic message we have here tonight is that Pasadena has a serious water crisis, and it's not facing up to it. It's using old ways of doing things. It's business as usual. Nothing has changed. We can just keep draining the stream, draining the basin, and nobody's going to notice. And it's just not the 21st century approach to developing a resilient water plan for the future. The Pasadena Water and Power Department has rejected a lot of the analysis, really, that needs to be done in order to really prove the very things that they're charging. Here you see what the spreading basins are like. Can I have the next slide, please? And we're talking about protecting our region's two greatest environmental treasures, one being the Arroyo Seco and Hahamungna, which is really the most precious habitat in our region. And the second is the Rainin Basin, an invaluable water resource, which has been in decline for 80 years, even though the city has had a program to stabilize the basin at the level it was at 80 years ago. However, the level today is 250 feet lower than it was 80 years ago when Pasadena moved with other agencies to stabilize the basin. This is not a sustainable program for the future. Next slide, please. This is what Hahamungna looks like today. These spreading basins, there's already extensive spreading basins, as you can see on the east side of the basin, 12 spreading basins already. They want to expand even more in the area that's coral up there at the top, where the new spreading basins are going to be. But the spreading basins are almost always empty. They're empty 99% of the time. And climate change makes empty basins more probable. So the question was asked, what's climate change going to do for fish? Ask, what's climate change going to do for the water in the stream? The nature of Hahamungna is being destroyed, and this project will continue that. Look at the area that the county maintenance zone is going to destroy in terms of the environmental habitat that's there, and then look at all the spreading basins that are up there, and then look at how they're going to expand the spreading basins, and tell me, is this how a city values its most important environmental treasure? Next slide, please. The spreading basins really are replacing rare habitat. Now, this is a difference in perspective. You know, you heard Mr. Madison, you heard, oh, well, this was a parking lot. No, this is an alluvial zone. It's alluvial sage scrub, a very precious kind of habitat, right in the transition zone between the mountains and the rare habitat of Hahamungna. And it's the kind of zone that just soaks water up naturally. In fact, all of Hahamungna is a spreading basin, really. So Water and Power looks upon it as a parking lot, which it was for 30 years. But I remember back 30 years ago, and I remember when the city allowed JPL to put the parking lot there. First of all, it was only supposed to be there 3 years. And then it was supposed to be replaced by natural habitat, because at that time, the city recognized the value of the habitat in that area. The EIR, unfortunately, fails to consider the environmental superior alternative, which is to use the natural hydrology of the Raymond Basin, a large spreading basin itself, to percolate as much water as possible. Next slide, please. Now, the EIR, you're hearing a lot of talk about the wonderful benefits this is going to have for fish, but the EIR denies that there are fish there. They didn't change that. They didn't do adequate surveys. And when they went to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife told them to go back and do better surveys because they did not document their contention that there's no fish in the arroyo. In fact, fish have been in the arroyo for 2 million years. And they're struggling. There's no doubt about it. They're struggling. The heat, the drought, the long drought, 10 years of drought, the station fire, and the floods that came after that had a very negative impact on the fish. But there are still fish there, and we know because we've been sending out trout scouts to find the fish. In addition to that, any doubt about that fact was removed when we learned in April that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife moved 469 rainbow trout from the next door neighbor, the West Fork of the San Gabriel River, into the Arroyo Seco as a rescue operation after the Bobcat fire. These are the kind of fish that have been in the arroyo for 2 million years. There are already fish there, and I'm sure they're welcoming the 469 more that the Department of Fish and Wildlife planted in last fall, in November and December. And that should have been recorded in the environmental impact report as a significant change, which should have forced them to recirculate the EIR at that time in order to deal with this issue. Next slide, please. This is the story that appeared in the Los Angeles Times on June 17th about it. Quest to save rainbow trout fuels water war in Pasadena. I don't like that kind of language about water wars, but the reality is that Pasadena Water and Powers Department negligence, and the negative role that they played over the years in destroying fish populations in the arroyo has colored their thinking so that they think they can deny that there's fish there at all. And in fact, the tremendous improvements that they promise for fish actually will only be made after steelhead fish return from the Pacific Ocean. They promise if and if and if they're going to do surveys in the future to determine if there's fish there. Well, we know there's fish there. So what they should do, and what we proposed, was to take their mitigation requirement and implement the mitigation requirement so that it provides for fish passage and environmental flow. Now, we're not against them taking more water when there's large amounts of water moving through the arroyo. We believe in local water management, and that part of the project is a good part of the project. What we're against is them sucking up every drop in the arroyo, beginning in April and continuing through the fall. Every drop. There's not a drop left for fish or wildlife. And that's not what Fish and Game Code says. They need to deal with that, and they're not dealing with it. Next slide, please. So what else is missing in the EIR? Well, there's really no evaluation of the potential impacts of climate change. Their assessment of how much water is going to be available, you heard 1,100 or something like that. They don't know, are they going to get 60%? Are they going to get 40%? They don't know if that 11 is going to be there because they based it all on 30 years of historic record. And everyone knows that because of climate change, those are outdated historical patterns that are not likely to be characteristic of the future. So the reality is there's probably going to be less water for those spreading basins. So we're going to have bigger spreading basins, more environmental destruction associated with the spreading basins, and less water to put them in. The Canyon Project has also failed to analyze the natural stream hydrology in the Haamungna Basin. What is the best way to conserve water in the Haamungna Basin? They have said, no, well, we can't look at that. They started off their whole EIR by saying, we can't look at that because we have to use spreading basins. Well, that's an assumption that's not necessarily accurate and is something that can be dealt with. They failed to consider the negative impacts on the Raymond groundwater basin, although it's going to contribute, we believe, to the devastating decline in groundwater levels beneath Pasadena. Next slide, please. This is the map for you. This is the main Pasadena area, sub-area of the Raymond Basin. And it shows you that there's a pattern here of 130 years of overdrafting of the groundwater basin and a steady decline with one shortest exception, basically when they had to turn their wells off, with the water dropping basically 3 feet a year. And this is what Pasadena Water and Power tells us that we can continue to do. You can't do this. A steady, devastating decline cannot be ignored. You are going to destroy the Raymond Basin for future generations. Next slide, please. The solution clearly is to recirculate the environmental impact report or to reject it. Next slide. CEQA requires that, as a matter of fact. It says when there's missing information in the draft environmental impact report, or when there's significant developments prior to certification, which is still now, up to now, they need to recirculate. They need to revise and recirculate, but they haven't done that. Prior to certification. You're going to certify a document that says there's no fish in the arroyo? Can't be farther from the truth. Is that where Pasadena wants to line up? And I'm sorry for those of you who don't understand the history of Pasadena, but I recommend that you read Charles Holder, who founded the Tournament of Roses, and see what he did in finding steelhead trout in the Arroyo Seco in the 1890s. It's a beautiful book called All About Pasadena, 1893. Excellent book. Next slide, please. Pasadena needs to be a steward of all the natural resources in the arroyo, not just water. We're for enhancing local water development, but it needs to be done in a sensitive way. This project does not do it in a sensitive way. This is a careless project that doesn't document its assertions and that is failing in many aspects of the environmental analysis. PWP should be restoring the Arroyo Seco, not degrading it. Next slide, please. You know, we've been joined by, it says 1,124 here. That was a week ago. We're now at 1,314 signatures. There's been immense opposition to this project. You got one letter in support of the project, and you've got 1,300 citizens and your key environmental organizations in this community. And all of the fishing groups in Southern California are saying, you need to take care of the fish now, not at some point in the future. You know, their statement that they're going to take care of the fish when the steelhead return from the Pacific Ocean is their way of saying when hell freezes over. It's a contemptuous statement about their environmental responsibility. There's a better way. The governor has outlined the program. It's to develop a resilient water program for Pasadena. Let the river flow and heal the basin. Next slide. Lots of information on our website about all of these issues. We hope you'll study it. These are complex issues, we admit, and they need your study. This is an issue that has been neglected by the city, and it is at your peril because you are robbing future generations if you continue on this current path. And now I introduce Ken Kules, who is a professional engineer with a career of experience with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California.
Can I have the presentation on the screen?
Mr. Kules, welcome. The appellant has about 3 minutes left. 2.
I think we want to insist upon the same amount of time that was given to the presenter from the Pasadena Water Power Department, which exceeded it by about 10 minutes.
Let's go forward, Mr. Kules.
You want to bring up Ken Kules?
Kules?
All right, go ahead.
Why don't we skip to the next slide? I'm going to start with a discussion of infiltration of flows in the stream bed. This slide shows an aerial view of the Arroyo Seco near JPL. The 3 photos to the left depict flows in the stream that were taken by Hugh Bowles on January 28th of this year, and the locations that the photos were taken are shown on the aerial photo. I've also shown the JPL Bridge and Lark Canyon. The graph in the lower right-hand corner shows the flows at the USGS stream upstream of Pasadena's diversion were a little over 3 cubic feet per second on that day. Inflows from Millard Canyon are modest since Lincoln Avenue Water Company diverts water from that stream, and my observation has been that the inflow to the Arroyo Seco is about 1 CFS. So the flows at the JPL bridge can be conservatively assumed to be about 3 CFS. What you can see from the 3 stream photos is that over a distance of about 1,200 feet, or about 1/4 of a mile, the water is infiltrated into the ground, and there's no longer water flowing in the stream. So the infiltration rate was about 12 CFS per mile, which is more than double the 5 CFS estimated by Philip Williams Associates in 2000. Next slide. In this slide, I compare infiltration with and without the ASCP for a scenario in which the stream flow at Pasadena's diversion dam is 19 CFS. The legend explains the symbols that I've used to show that for the existing condition, 18 CFS will be diverted and 1 CFS will bypass the diversion and remain in the stream. That flow will be joined by 1 CFS from Millard Canyon for a total flow of 2 CFS at the JPL bridge. Since that flow is well below the 12 CFS infiltration rate of the stream bed, the entire flow will infiltrate into the stream bed and not reach Devil's Gate Dam. Under the proposed condition and with the same 19 CFS flow at the diversion dam, all 19 CFS will be diverted by the ASCP. The 1 CFS flow downstream will come from Millard Canyon, and 1 CFS will infiltrate in the stream bed. The amount of spreading will increase by 1 CFS, and Pasadena will earn 0.8 CFS in pumping credits. As shown in the table, none of the spread water will be new water, and the net impact on the groundwater basin due to the pumping credits will be a loss of 0.8 CFS. It's clear from this example that not all of the increased water spread by the ASCP is water that would otherwise pass through Devil's Gate Dam as asserted by PWP, and that the ASCP has the potential to harm the Raymond Basin. Next slide. The logic from the table in the last slide is that if the new water is more than the pumping credit, the impact of the groundwater basin is beneficial. If the new water is less than the pumping credit, the impact is adverse. Next slide. Here's what the draft EIR has to say about the variables new water and pumping credit. I won't read the text, but ask you to focus on the statement the draft calculations that PWP did only determine the amount of expected increase in water delivered to the spreading basins and did not estimate new water. With regard to calculation of pumping credits, the draft EIR appears to be uncertain about the percent allocation. It should be noted that the judgment has no provision for pumping credit other than 80% for surface water rights. Next slide. The Raymond Basin Management Board has adopted rules and regulations that address judgment provisions, and they too have no provision for pumping credits that get an allocation other than the 80% related to surface water rights. Next slide. The executive officer of the Raymond Basin Management Board gave a presentation to the Municipal Services Committee in May and said the following. Please play the audio file.
One second.
I think that we really need to go back and take one more step and look at the current spreading credits that are allowed and how that accounting is done, and really if that actually is making any impact on lowering water levels, or it is a true sustainable program. You're not necessarily going to have all this extra water that's spread to your benefit under the current rules and regulations.
From these remarks, you get the clear sense that the accounting for pumping credits is uncertain and likely to change. Next slide. This is language from SECOR regarding recirculation requirements. The relevant test is whether the draft EIR, not including the final EIR or any other document in the administrative record, if the draft EIR reaches a conclusion for which no supporting evidence is offered and that shortcoming hindered meaningful understanding of project impacts, recirculation of the draft EIR is required. The language goes on to make very limited exception for minor changes, and that recirculation need only be done regarding the resources in dispute. I don't think that any conclusion can be reached other than that the draft EIR made impact determinations without supporting evidence and must be recirculated. Next slide. The Raymond Basin is not favorable under the judgment, and any adverse impact from the ASCP would exacerbate the overdraft and be significant. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Keel. Let's see, let's turn to the members of the council who may have questions for the appellant. Seeing none, why don't we, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Let's start with Vice Mayor Wilson, followed by Mr. Kennedy.
I had a question for Ken, and Ken did share some of his calculations with me at one point prior, but I think that was, I heard a claim from the engineer that there was some mathematical errors in terms of the overdraw calculation that you had made, Ken. Are you able to respond to that claim of maybe switching? It sounded like you were not properly converting CFS into acre feet. Is that? Can you respond to that?
Well, it's a complicated answer, but the simple answer is there was an error in the model.
Okay. And they said that your model, when that error was fixed, did show a net benefit to the basin, where in the original model actually had more of an overdraft. Is that correct as well?
Well, not really. At the time the mistake was discovered, I also began to realize that the pumping credits were not certain. The pumping credits that I used in the model were 80%, an assumption of 80%. And it became clear that there weren't any regulations, and there was no ability to refine the model to account for both the error and the a legitimate number for credits. And at that point, I concluded that the model was really inadequate to do the real job of evaluation.
Okay, I understand those are two separate or related items. I'll ask the staff about the pumping credits later. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
Yes. Ken and Tim, I just want to thank you both, Maureen Wilson, David Cutter, and Hugh Bowles for really stepping up and really doing this, because you want to make sure that we have adequate water and adequate habitat in the Arroyo. And you also pointed out, which is not in dispute, that the Raymond Basin, for example, is dropping precipitously and could, in fact, affect the health of the city of Pasadena. We are the primary users of that water, but we only have an equal share as it relates to voting in that area. So it appears to me that significant information is missing from the EIR, if only a fraction of what Ken has shared with us tonight is accurate. But that is just to give deference to ensure that all of my colleagues are really listening to the presentation that Tim Brick and Ken Kules have made tonight. So I want to be clear on what you are requesting. You're simply requesting that we vote no tonight in terms of the recommendation on agenda report item 13. Is that correct?
Correct.
Well, let me go back to to what we offered last month in terms of settlement to clarify.
Tim, if we can just.
That that you answer my questions, and then you can, per the mayor, determine if you want to go further. So is that accurate?
Is that the?
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay. And then what you're saying specifically is that we need one more bite at this whole issue, and so you would like to recirculate the EIR to answer the questions that you have provided in the slides that you shared with the council tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And for staff, what is the detriment if we do exactly what has been requested by the appellant? We have nothing to lose and everything to gain by getting this right. What is the time frame it would take to recirculate the EIR? Am I missing something as it relates to timing?
Councilmember Kennedy, I would ask Bawa or other members of the team to come to the podium to respond to your question as to what the impact would be of just simply, as it's sort of characterized, adding more information to the EIR. I would say, from my perspective, and mind you, this project has been in the work for numerous years. If I recall correctly, we already lost one grant because of the extended period of time that it's taken. It's no simple matter to update an EIR and recirculate it. It's probably on the scale of, it's multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. It's multiple months, if not measured in years. It creates additional opportunities for legal challenges. If the City Council, in its wisdom, felt that this is not a project it wishes to pursue, then I would recommend you simply say that. We believe the EIR is fully compliant with CEQA. A City Attorney's Office has outside counsel available to talk about the adequacy of the EIR. I understand that Mr. Brick and Mr. Kules don't like the project. That is fine, but we believe the analysis has been done correctly. With that, I'll turn to Gucharan Bawa to see if he wanted to put a finer point on the response to your question, sir.
Bawa?
Thank you, Steve. This is Gucharan Bawa. Okay, all right.
I just raise a point of order while that's happening.
Madison, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Kennedy said that we need to vote no, but do we need to take any action at all? Won't the Board of Zoning Appeals decision stand if we take no action?
Ms. City Attorney?
Mr. Madison, pursuant to CEQA case law, you actually do have to take an affirmative action on the CEQA item.
Okay. Okay, so this isn't about upholding the BZA decision or overturning it. This action would have been required, whatever happened below.
Because there was an appeal, that's correct. You need to take an affirmative action either way, correct?
No, not because there was an appeal.
If there had been no appeal of the BZA decision, the matter would have stopped at the BZA and that decision would have stood.
But if we take, so what if it's 4-4?
You cannot have a certified CEQA document on a tie. It needs to be a majority in favor in order to certify a CEQA document.
I thought you just said that BOZA's approval would have stood.
If there had been no appeal.
Okay, I'm not following that, but that's fine. I don't want to take too much of Mr. Kennedy's time.
This is the gift left to us by the IDS project, if you recall, where the court said we had to take an affirmative act once an appeal has come before the City Council.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, I think Mr. Bawa was about to provide us some other data points.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. I'll be brief. City Manager has covered most of the issues. What I'd like to say is that there are opportunities right now on the horizon to get some grants or apply for some grants. And if the EIR is approved, we can still the following steps are applying for the permits, which take a long time, and then the design could vary depending on the permit conditions. Before that, the project would not be constructed. So it's a long path forward, many opportunities for the council to correct the path, and if additional studies are required, if that's the desire of the council, staff would take that direction. But just delaying the EIR process by a few months or years, and past is the evidence of that, is going to lead us to not do the project in time and just lose some grant opportunities.
When you say, Mr. Bawa, not do the project in time for what?
You know, the grant, we had a grant on this project 6, 7, 8 years ago. And because of the EIR got litigated.
Mr. Bawa, with all due respect, I don't believe a grant, discussing a grant from 7 years ago would be helpful in the council trying to reach a serious decision where there is conflict on the EIR. That's 7 years ago. What are you talking about? That's a recent vintage that would add a data point that would help the council reach its best decision with the data provided.
All that I'm saying is that the grant opportunities have windows, short windows to apply for. And if the EIR is approved, that opens the door for us to apply for those grants. And the projects which are beyond EIR or CEQA have better opportunities to get grants.
I think what I'm hearing, Mr. Kennedy, is the staff believes the analysis in the current EIR is complete, and delaying it, there's an opportunity cost, delaying approval in the absence of especially in the absence of a changed analysis or changed facts, may cost the city an opportunity to complete the project because there are windows for these funds. And I would not disagree with that, Mayor. The only objection I was having is that if you're going to make that a part of your analysis and your argument to convince the council to take one direction or another direction, please don't use something as stale as 7 years ago to make your point. That's all I was saying there. I don't want to belabor the point. I think it behooves us having these types of highly qualified citizens of Pasadena who we have engaged to do extraordinary work for us, particularly knowing that Tim Brick, I believe, served as the chair of the Metropolitan Water District for, I believe, 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. So we don't want to discount the concerns that he has raised. I think they're legitimate concerns. I'm hopeful that the majority of the council will view those concerns that Ken Kules and Tim Brick have brought to our attention, and that we not approve staff's recommendation tonight, give additional opportunity either for a settlement that both sides will not be fully happy with, but a settlement that our community will be advanced significantly. This whole issue, council, about water is going to be an ongoing issue. Just feel the drought, feel the heat, feel the fact that we are not doing a great job in capturing runoff, et cetera. So we're going to revisit this over and over, and future councils are going to revisit. Thank you very much. Opportunity to share my views and ask a couple of questions, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. As a reminder, we still have public comment. We have 6 to 7 comments, and then we have rebuttal. And I'm going to ask both the appellant and the city to stick to the 3 minute time frame that's been outlined. So in rebuttal. So next is Councilmember Williams, followed by Vice Mayor Wilson.
Oh, just really quickly, so we can get to deliberations, which is kind of what we are supposed to be doing with the discussion we just had. We're supposed to be asking questions right now of the appellant. But what I will say, with all due respect, Councilmember Kennedy, there are project issues and there are policy issues. And I think one of the hardest things about this project is it is conflating the two. There is a Raymond Basin sort of policy issue, but there's also the Arroyo Seco Canyon project and EIR issue. And so I would encourage the council to really look at the information, especially from the BZA and from the previous decisions, to tease out those policy issues versus the project issues, and let's focus on the project issues. Thanks.
Well stated. Vice Mayor Wilson.
Thank you. I actually had 2 questions for staff based off the appellant's comments. So The first one, I think, is Teresa. There was a statement that with the introduction of the, whatever, almost 500 trout, that would qualify as a significant new development and require recirculation of the EIR. Is there a threshold, and what is your response to that claim?
I would start by saying that that is not a changed circumstance or new information with regard to this project. It's extraneous to the analysis that fish do not naturally occur there when they are introduced from a source that is many, many miles away as an attempt to save those fish. And frankly, if you want to talk a little bit more about that, we do have Kristen Starbird, our CEQA consultant, available, as well as the project biologist. So I would argue that there is not a requirement to recirculate this EIR.
Could I maybe just ask Kristen to weigh in on that as well? Because I think it's a legal question. It's really not a biology question.
Right. I appreciate that. This is Kristen Starbird. Thank you. So the environmental impact report, I hear an echo. I hope it's okay. Studied the existing conditions at the time of issuance of the NOP. The biological studies determined that there were no fish at the time. Subsequent, we've learned even CDFW's own studies of the Arroyo Seco also found no fish. So I'd like to just say the issue is at the time the studies were accurate. However, the design of the project and the analysis of the EIR specifically and explicitly assumes the presence of fish. That is the point of the design of the new facility, is to have the roughened channel that allows for fish passage. So I guess my first point is to say, regardless of the results of the studies that were done at the time, it was understood that fish may be in the stream in a future condition and was designed accordingly in consideration of that possibility. Therefore, there is no change to the draft EIR that would need to occur because now there are fish. There were always anticipated to eventually be future fish populations. So,
okay,
so it doesn't rise to the level of requiring or resulting in a new significant impact of the proposed project, I guess. And that would be the trigger, for recirculation, is a new situation that was a new significant impact when in fact it doesn't rise to that level.
Okay, thank you. That was a helpful response. And then, Bawa, I think maybe this is to you or to Mitch. There was evidence was provided, and I was at MSC when the water master from the Raymond Basin did state that it sounded unclear about our pumping rights and pumping credits. And this project is predicated on, I think, capturing another 1,000 acre feet of kind of local water.
So, Vice Mayor, the project assumes 60 to 80% pump back rights. Now, Raymond Basin would take a study. I don't think they would make it 100%. Very likely they would reduce it. And more they reduce, more is the water left into the basin. So it's beneficial either way. So I'm actually struggling with what's the question here.
So you're saying, I mean, I understand this benefit. I'm thinking from a water supply, maybe this comes up in the WSRP, that if, let's just say Raymond Basin says you get 20%, obviously would be healthy for the Raymond Basin because it would increase the recharge, right?
Right.
It would certainly undermine, at least I know Mitch was reluctant to do the ROI analysis, but if we didn't have 1,000 acre feet of credit and it was 200, the payback period on the $14 million would be not 12 years, it would be 50 years.
Right. So if the determination about the pump back is such that it does not make a financial sense, we will not do the project.
Okay, and when will that be
that will be all done before the construction is done.
Okay, so that's an economic issue. It's not really, frankly, a CEQA issue.
Right.
But thank you for answering that. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. That completes questions from members of the council. Why don't we turn to public comment, and then again, we'll afford the appellant rebuttal of 3 minutes and the applicant rebuttal of 3 minutes.
Emily Goodall would be called in, followed by Steve Messer has not yet checked in, so if Mr. Messer is listening, please check in and join the meeting. But Emily, go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is the first time I've ever attended a city council meeting or made a public comment or participated actually in my local political system. I've been motivated to hang on for 4.5 hours here and express myself here today because I've never felt as strongly identified with my place of residence as I do here in Pasadena. I love everything about living here because it's a very special place. And for me, the main thing that makes Pasadena so special is the Front Range of the Angeles National Forest and the living heartbeat of that forest, which is the Arroyo Seco and Hahumanga watershed. From the first time that I drove down into the watershed to buy some native plants from Hahumanga Nursery, I was struck by the uniqueness and beauty of that place. I've been hiking all over California for most of my life, and I was still surprised at the sheer loveliness of the watershed, except for the spreading basins. It is a gem in our crown city, but it's not just lovely, it's also living. And as I began to volunteer with the Arroyo Seco Foundation Trout Scouts, I learned how emphatically alive it truly is. The Trout Scouts have diligently documented dozens of trout and California newts, both above and below the point at which Pasadena Water and Power proposes to divert even more water from the arroyo. If those species can be resilient and adaptable to the point of living and thriving in the arroyo all on their own without anyone trying to help them, what a brilliant success story we could have with just the slightest attention to their habitat, just the smallest chance to let the river flow. And it won't just benefit wildlife. I believe letting the river flow is a better, more sustainable way to conserve water in the long run than artificial spraying basins. I feel that this country is on the verge of a change in the way we interact with our natural resources. It's a moment in time when you, the council, have all the facts needed to make an informed and conscious decision. Are you going to allow Pasadena to move into the future, perhaps even create a shining example of responsible and ethical water management systems? Or are you going to continue to throw good money after bad in the sunk cost fallacy of the
1 minute
and additional water diversions? I sincerely hope that you reject the Arroyo Seco Canyon project as written, as it does not acknowledge the presence of the wildlife that I and many other volunteers have spent hours observing with our own eyes. Thank you very much for this time.
We are still unable to locate Steve Messer in the Zoom meeting, so we'll turn to Paul Lofthouse, followed by Jim G., followed by Laura Solomon. Mr. Lofthouse, go ahead and unmute, and you may start.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a long-term resident of Pasadena. I graduated from John Muir High School many years ago in Pasadena City College. And my home overlooks the JPL parking lot. The rear of my house is located at Crestford Drive, the rear of my property. It overlooks where the spreading ponds would be located and the existing dirt lot. I'm totally in favor of these spreading ponds. I think we're in a crisis, a water crisis, as we all talked about, and we need to do as much as possible. And I feel that adding these spreading ponds, besides the water infiltration, it's a great source for birds and rare and endangered birds and things like this. I also believe, right now, the dirt lot has hundreds of cars parked on it on the weekend, because I just look over my railing and there they are. So it's just a dirt lot used by a lot of people bring their truck up there and do donuts in the dirt lot. And here JPL spent millions of dollars on a parking lot to build. So I think we need to go ahead and get those ponds done. And I think the city and their proposal, the water department regarding fish, my kids and I have been running. I used to run up all the way like 12 miles or 7 miles up the Arroyo Seco and back was our 15-mile run on the weekends on Sunday. And maybe further up where you go up and over this dam diversion, you might find wild trout up there, but not below. You're not going to find a wild trout, only
1 minute
from the weekend. So I hope you vote in favor of this. If it was up to me, those 10,000 acre feet of water that need to be percolated into the ground as opposed to going to the ocean, I'd percolate them into the Brookside Golf Course and make ponds down there. We need to save all the water we can, and we need to be good examples. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lofthouse. Next.
Jim G, followed by Laura Solomon.
It's star 6 to unmute, Mr. Jim.
Mr. G.
Jim G, star 6.
Why don't we come back to...
Okay, we'll skip Jim G and go to Laura Solomon. Ms. Solomon, go ahead and unmute and you can start your public comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm Laura Solomon with the Pasadena Audubon Society, and thank you, Mayor and council members, for the opportunity to speak out against this project. Ansel Adams said it is horrifying that we have to fight our own government to save the environment. Tim Brick is right. This project is old thinking, and it's time for new thinking. Fixing water recharge with more settling ponds is like building new freeways to fix traffic congestion. It doesn't work. We can't pave the entire city and then expect a few settling ponds to make up the difference in the groundwater recharge. If we have the right to take only 60 to 80% of what we get credit for pumping, then why have the levels dropped 250 feet in 80 years? It's not working. We need new thinking. And aren't you curious about how to do that? Because of our settlement with LA County regarding the Big Dig, water will now be held behind the dam until July 1 instead of April 1. Aren't you curious to know how that will affect ground recharge? The EIR is not. It disparages the project. Aren't you curious why? You were told that we want the hard degraded dirt beneath where the parking lot was to remain dirt. That's ridiculous, and I'm offended by that statement. No, we want it to be restored to the alluvial sage scrub that it's supposed to be. And alluvial scrub is good at capturing water. Aren't you curious about that? PWP is giving you a false choice. They say either pump more or buy more from Metropolitan Water District. That's ridiculous. No, no, no. We could do water recycling. We could do rain harvesting gardens. Your own PWP gave wonderful presentations on that. But do I see rain harvesting gardens in all of our parks, all over our city? No.
1 minute.
I also see people watering their lawns in the middle of the day for hours at a time. Why do you allow that to happen? And then take our stream. I'm not willing to lose a stream or wildlife, including fish and birds, so that a few people can overwater their lawns in the middle of the summer. We can do better. Aren't you curious to find out how? I am. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Solomon.
We are unable to locate Steve Messer, Michelle Lacker, or Peter Weinberger. We could try Jim G one more time and see if Mr. Jim G, could you try star 6 on your phone? There you go.
Hello, this is Jim.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. My name is Jim Green, and I would like to speak in support of the Arroyo Seco Canyon project. I am a longtime resident of Pasadena. I am the former Chief of Operations at the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, where I worked for 31 years. And I am also a licensed professional civil engineer in the state of California and have worked on numerous drought contingency projects throughout the years. The Southwest United States, including Pasadena, will continue to experience the effects of climate change and prolonged droughts. It is critical for municipalities and water agencies to develop a robust, reliable, and diverse water supply portfolio. In other words, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't rely on just one water supply. In addition to imported water, agencies should consider and manage local supplies such as stormwater, groundwater, reuse and reclaimed water, and implement water conservation measures when appropriate. The Arroyo Seco Canyon project is an important project to help achieve this goal. It will help the city to continue to diversify its water supply portfolio. The Arroyo Seco Canyon project is a stormwater capture and groundwater recharge project. It will capture more water during large storm events, and it will help position the city to meet current and future water supply challenges in an environmentally responsible manner. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Hugh Bowles is next, and then Dorothy Wong. Hugh's gone. Okay, Dorothy Wong. If you unmute Miss Wong, you can go ahead and speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, council members and everyone. This is definitely a vital decision at this point, and I would urge you to really consider the effects that this project has on the downstream habitat altogether. So one thing I heard from the report is that water is flowing over the dam. It's not flowing over the dam. And in fact, the last year of rain that we have had, the water didn't even reach the dam from the Arroyo Seco. The majority of the water that pools at the dam is the storm drain runoff from Altadena and La Cañada and the 210 freeway and very small portions of Pasadena. So we need to really work on new age solutions, further destruction of the very delicate riparian stream zone downstream of this dam are critical. Young people experience nature. If we're going to be taking the majority of the water behind that new dam and not let it flow downstream outside of storm flow, that is going to significantly hurt amazing habitat, not only downstream of the dam, but into the Hahamungna. This is the time for the city of Pasadena to take the Hahamungna watershed seriously as a treasure. One of the most biodiverse places is losing the battle to flood control. Let's really look at ways to reduce our runoff from our homes, partner with Altadena, Lincoln Avenue Water. Let's capture the water, and Measure W provides $300 million every single year to water resilience. So there are lots of ways to capture water. Please preserve the last remaining natural stream zone habitat and let the water flow. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll bring in Hugh Bowles. Mr. Bowles, *6 to unmute your phone. You have to press star. There you go. Go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I was actually one of the appellants, but my time got eaten up, so I'm going to give my presentation now. I've spent many years trying to improve policy around Hahamungna. In our first settlement discussion with PWP, they apologized that the project did not provide for fish passage.
Excuse me.
And they agreed that there
Excuse
should
me,
be curiosity about the current
Mr. Bowles?
science.
Mr. Bowles?
Mr.
Yes.
Bowles, we have a procedural issue here. Madam City Attorney?
Yes, since you are part of the appellant representatives, you would allot your time under the appellant time allotment, not this. This is for other members of the public.
Well, I now am another member of the public because my appellant time was cut short. I wasn't granted an opportunity to even speak as an appellant.
I think, though, the appellant group determined how they were going to apportion the time, and we gave a significant amount of
Well,
time.
Mr. Brick, if you remember, Mr. Brick said there would be 3 speakers. Himself, I have no control over the amount of time that Mr. Brick spent, Mr. Ken Kules, and myself.
Would you prefer to use the rebuttal time? Because the appellants were to determine how they were going to allot their time. Get this handled, that might be a way you could do it.
Well, let me say this to everyone in the room. This is a project that has been run by the city attorney because they interrupted the Board of Zoning Appeals
Mr. Bowles?
right at the time when they were about to return the EIR
Mr. Bowles,
and misrepresented
Mr.
CEQA
Bowles,
and the appellant's
Mr. Bowles,
position.
we
So
will
yes, I will speak at rebuttal.
We'll
Okay,
recognize,
thank you.
We'll recognize you first at rebuttal, Mr. Bowles. Thank you.
Okay. And how much time will there be at rebuttal?
3 minutes for both sides. Thank you.
So 3 minutes so if Mr. Brick wants to rebut and Ken Kules wants to rebut,
Yes.
we basically get a minute each. Is that right? Okay, well, Ken, I might speak
Mr.
for longer
Bowles,
than a minute.
if you can, thank you.
That completes public comment on this item, and we can move to the rebuttal time. So, where did Mr. Bowles go? Yes, please. So we are now at the rebuttal period for the appellants. Mr. Bowles, if you want to go first, you press star 6
Just
to
so
unmute.
we're clear, Mr. Bowles, you'll be recognized first. Mr. Brick and Mr. Kules, how did you want to break up the time? 1 minute each? Mr. Kules?
I can do 1 minute.
Okay, so Mr. Bowles will go first, followed by Mr. Kules and Mr. Brick.
Mr. Bowles, if you would press star 6 again to unmute on your phone, star 6.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Okay.
So I'm going to start the
I'm going
three-minute
to
timer.
cut to the chase. I'm going to cut to the chase here. So in 1995, Converse Consultants, who were hired by PWP, found the spreading basins had percolation rates by orders of magnitude worse than the rest of the basin. In 2000, Philip Williams and Associates, hired by the city, stated the best water feature for Hahamunga was to restore the stream, stating that the stream absorbs most of the low flows before the dam, and during high flows, if water is left intermittently behind the dam, aquifer recharge in a normal rainfall year would increase by 160%.
20
when
seconds.
When PWP have been challenged on this, they say we have to use the spreading basins regardless of their efficiency. Efficiency is not about how quickly water gets into the aquifer. The EIR needs to be returned for these issues to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would go next, Mr. Kules or Mr. Brick? You have 2 minutes left.
Mr. Kules?
I'll go.
Go for it, Ken.
Go ahead.
You heard from the appellant's attorney regarding rebuttal on the CEQA section 15088.5A4 language that requires recirculation of the draft EIR regarding impacts on fisheries. However, that didn't address the impact on the hydraulic impacts, and there's no analysis on that in the agenda report or in the EIR. You heard a back of the envelope analysis of hydrology from PWP's general manager. A thorough analysis should have been included in the EIR, but it wasn't, and the issue deserves a thorough assessment through recirculation of the draft EIR.
You have about 15 seconds, or we can,
I'm done.
Okay, you have 1:15, Mr. Brick.
Thank you so much. Let me just say that there's a better way to do this. This is the 20th century way. Pasadena Water and Power and the city of Pasadena needs to enter the 21st century. The state policy with regard to water is to develop a resilient water plan. And let me quote the governor on how the governor defines resilience. He says, resilience is the ability to cope with more extreme droughts and floods, rising temperatures, declining fish populations, over-reliance on groundwater, and other challenges. This program is headed in the wrong direction. It's a shame. It's a shameful document for you to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Brick, Mr. Kules, and Mr. Bowles. Next, we'll turn to staff for their rebuttal. 3 minutes.
Staff, you have 3 minutes. Is it just one person speaking?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You know what, could you guys use the handheld, please?
Yes.
No.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
All right,
okay.
Starting your time now.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate that we are creating additional area to capture stormwater, and that is going over Devil's Gate Dam and is lost to the ocean. We are converting a dirt lot to naturalized basins with vegetation making way for habitat. Letting the river flow is a statement, changing baseline conditions, and that would be against CEQA requirements. That there is a net benefit to the groundwater basin, as you heard from our hydrogeologist, and that we are adding fish protection features and passage when the project will be built. And we have reviewed a year-long study to show that there's no downstream effect to the riparian habitat. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Natalie.
That completes the public hearing part of it.
Okay, so now we'll turn to the council deliberations. Oh, that's right. We'll entertain a motion to close the public
Motion to
hearing.
close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call on closing the public hearing.
Councilmember Hampton to close the public hearing.
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilmember Madison.
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda.
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas.
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
Motion to close the public hearing is approved unanimously.
Public hearing is closed. Now we can turn to deliberations. I see Ms. Williams is first in the queue. Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think this is obviously a very complicated issue, and as I mentioned before, there are project issues and there are policy issues, and I think it's very important to separate the two. Is that a dog?
Someone dog, please. It's not anybody we can see, or I can see.
It might be Ken Kules. Could you put yourself on mute, Mr. Kules? Thank you.
Okay. So I think I think there's a compromise here, and that's kind of what public policy is all about: is trying to allow water and power, which is a utility, to serve its customers in a reliable and cost-effective way, but also in a way that manages the impact on the environment and our natural resources like in the Raymond Basin. So whenever we're ready, I've gone through all the documents, I've seen this project a couple of times, and so I do have a proposal that compromises, that is a compromise between the project as well, accepting the project in a way that has public policy direction to address the longer term issues of the fish habitat and the Raymond Basin. So happy to do that whenever anyone's ready.
Okay, let's turn to Vice Mayor Wilson.
I'm looking forward to Felicia's elegant solution. I'm at the edge of my seat. I do want to thank the public and the appellants. We are incredibly fortunate in the city of Pasadena to have committed, thoughtful, well-educated public who care about important issues like this. So regardless of the outcome, I do, as chair of MSC, want to thank Tim and Ken and others, Hugh, Maury, who really brought this attention, put it in the sunshine and the light that I think it deserves. I think Water and Power, and I have a lot of respect for our Water and Power group, our Bawa, your leadership, and I think we've done a good job on the power side, but I'll speak for myself. I feel like water hasn't really warranted the attention that it deserves, and I think this project has been a real eye-opener for me. Certainly we've worried about saving water when we've been in a drought, but really thinking more strategically about our water supply. We can't just expect the Raymond Basin or the Metropolitan to be an infinite tap. So I can assure this group, and I hope I speak for some of my peers, that water has taken a new position of urgency. You know, the drought's not going away. Global warming, unfortunately, is not going away. And I think the topic of how we manage our water supply and both sustainably and resiliently is critically important. So I think this discussion has been, I think, the beginning of a series of discussions. I know we are on our way to seeing the WSRP, which is kind of a strategic plan of where water will be coming from and what investments we make. And this is just a small part of that. So I encourage all of us, the public, and this council to pay closer attention to this vital resource. Without water, we're not Pasadena. And we are living in Southern California, which probably in its natural state would be a desert. So I just want to set that up, Felicia, before you find an elegant solution, because I do think this is the beginning of what is a very important conversation. I don't think there are simple answers, and I challenge everyone involved in the public that these aren't right or wrong answers. I think these things are complicated. I've had to learn a lot in the last 6 months, and we still have a lot to learn. So it's an incredibly important journey, and there's lots of work to be done. And I thank everyone for stepping up and being part of this important conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Madison, were you in the queue?
Yeah, Mayor, I just think that I think the appellants aren't wrong, you know, in the sense that we need to be mindful of, you know, the limitations here. But I think that, you know, there is natural recharge, as they point out, even if we do nothing. But what this does is supplement that. And in the wet years, and one aspect of climate change that we know is that in wet years, that there will be disproportionately wet years as well. And there, it's all the more important that we try to capture what water we can to, enhance that recharge effort. And, you know, at the end of the day, this is, a parking lot that's being turned into a water recharge project, and it's cost effective for our ratepayers. So there's nothing to prevent us from continuing to dialogue around these issues and all, but, this project's been through a ton of review, as I noted earlier, and I think, whatever the compromise Councilmember Williams is going to offer, I think on this project, we should move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Any other comments or questions before we turn to our ambassador for the United Nations? Mr. Masuda, were you?
I am. Thank you so much, Mayor. I've been listening to this topic for quite a while now, and I'm so pleased. I think Mr. Madison mentioned that we have a lot of bright minds, and I think it's really great for our city discussing water, climate change. It's very difficult. This is a very difficult subject right now, and it's very complex. No simple decision here. So I look forward to voting on this decision on this item, and hopefully that we can make a good decision and go forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Masuda. Councilmember Rivas.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to everyone, staff, the applicant, residents for chiming in. This is certainly, in my time on the council, the largest or the most voluminous item I've had to digest, and so I appreciate all your help and perspectives in doing that. In short, though, I do share Councilmember Madison's position. I think it's an important project that will allow us to capture more stormwater, which we would otherwise lose. But I also believe it must be done in a way that protects the Arroyo. So I really did appreciate BOZA's additional conditions of approval, which did address a lot of the concerns of the appellants. And I think as long as the project can incorporate them, which the department has said they can, that we should uphold BOZA's decision, certify the EIR, and move forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Rivas. Ambassador Williams?
Okay, so I want to echo the comments of the rest of the council members. We are really fortunate to have many citizens involved in our process and citizens who really have the technical knowledge to be able to assist us with these decisions. So I want to thank the public. We received a lot of letters. It was really good reading them and getting different pieces of information. And I'm going to try to Frankenstein this thing together after seeing this project a couple of times. So as I mentioned, there are a lot of really competing goals here that are very different, and it's unfortunate that the state really wants us to diversify our water supply, as the former Met Water public commenter said. So we're supposed to diversify, we're supposed to serve load. At the same time, we have state mandates to allow for more housing and more population growth. So we have all of these sort of conflicting policies, but yet we're probably exceeding our carrying capacity at this point, and we need to live within our means, which is living within the Raymond Basin means and the Arroyo Seco. So as I am looking at this, I think there are two key issues that come into play here. And there's the project we are being asked to approve, and then there's the administrative efforts to preserve the basin. And within that, the two issues are the stream flows and the support for the fish habitat. And then secondly is the percolation and the recharge of the Raymond Basin, which has been declining rapidly. To be fair, we are not the only pumpers out of the Raymond Basin. This is a very large entity, the Raymond Basin Management Board. Pasadena is not the only dog in that kennel, if you will. So there are a lot of different parties that we have to work with to try to come up with a solution that it looks like Tony Zampiello really, when he came and talked to us at MSC, he had some really good solutions for safe yield and other things that I think would preserve the basin. So the compromise that I have is one of my fellow friends who was a mayor in another city said, if anyone leaves the council chambers happy, we have not done our job. Because everybody should leave unhappy because it means that everybody got something, right? So no one is going to leave here happy with this proposal. I'm going to warn you ahead of time. It's kind of a spoiler alert. But I would propose that we uphold the BZA's decision to adopt the EIR with the modified conditions and then provide policy direction to the city manager that further protects the basin and the natural environment. So the components of the motion would be to uphold the staff's recommendation to uphold the BZA decision and modify the three conditions in there that would then be turned to administrative recommendations. So that would be modify, you would remove conditions 12, 13, and 14 from the BZA decision. You would move 15 to number 12 since those three are gone. And then to take 12, 13, and 14, as Councilmember Rivas said, with the BZA, the conditions they had, they were very good. I would turn those into administrative direction to the city manager. And so those directions would be one, that PWP will conduct an infiltration study to analyze percolation rates in stream within the project area. And I do have this in writing for anyone who needs it. Two, that PWP will operate the water intake and diversion system in accordance with a fish survey, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife permits, and other regulatory requirements. Number 3, that PWP should make renewed efforts to identify and understand the fish population and status within the streams and seek to support that habitat. And then lastly, that Pasadena Water and Power, along with the other agencies, will explore means to recharge the Raymond Basin and provide semi-annual updates to the MSC or the City Council on their efforts to work with the Raymond Basin Management Board to promote long-term sustainability of the basin. So that's my proposal, is to split it into, we approve the EIR and move the project forward, but we allow the administrative direction of the city manager to help preserve the longer-term issue of the water and the fish habitat and the Raymond Basin.
So if I'm understanding your proposal, it would keep intact the spirit of the BZA decision, but distinguish between administrative acts and conditions of approval.
Yes, so we would uphold the BZA decision, but take their 3 conditions and turn them into administrative acts, as opposed to conditions on the project EIR, because they're probably not appropriate for an EIR. They're more appropriate for administrative.
Maybe we can have a response from the city manager and his staff, and then also
the city attorney
as
well. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. I think what Councilmember Williams has suggested is an appropriate way forward. I've been in conversations earlier today with the city attorney's office, with Gucharan, and staff's confident that it makes sense, and we would certainly follow through as directed by the council. We think certifying the EIR, of course, is the right decision, and we would follow through as directed by the council.
Okay, and from the city attorney, Teresa?
Yes, concur completely. The separation between the legal and the policy matters makes for a better administrative record and, frankly, a better process and policy for the city to follow.
And we're confident that should the EIR be challenged, it would withstand legal challenge?
As confident as we can be, that's right.
Well, I mean, the changes don't...
The changes actually make it more clear in that it separates the policy from the technical. So it's more clear in this manner.
And if it, to the extent it removes ambiguity and makes the intent of the EIR and the BOZA approval, that's what I'm asking, is because we're reviewing de novo, but we are reviewing a decision of the BZA, and we're being asked to approve an EIR. So I just want to be sure that nothing in the Ambassador Williams' proposal would open the EIR up for challenge in any way.
It does not. It frankly makes it more clear.
Okay. All right.
Well, if it makes it more clear, I'll second that.
Mayor, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Councilmember Williams, just to make sure I'm understanding, so are you saying that the BOZA essentially was trying to do policy in their conditions, and so we're going to separate those?
Yes,
Okay.
it was, I think the BOZA conditions are more appropriate as policy direction as opposed to EIR conditions for the project.
Got it. Thank you.
Good clarification, Councilmember.
So could I
Mr. Wilson?
ask Ambassador Williams to reiterate, because there is Exhibit B which are the conditions of approval that were from BOZA. And I want to make sure I'm tracking what you said so I can mark them. Because they did add,
14.
yeah, okay, 12, 13, 14, yes.
Were the BOZA ones.
Yep.
We take those out and turn them into policy.
Okay,
And then number 15 stays in that the BOZA put in.
okay.
And we make it number 12.
Those are the changes?
Yes.
Okay, I think we had a second already, if I recall. Okay, thank you.
Ambassador Hampton.
That's right.
Mr. Kennedy, Councilmember
Mr. Kennedy?
You're muted.
Mayor, I think Councilmember Williams had said that she had a prepared alternative. If we could see that alternative since it's already prepared, that may be helpful
Oh,
for me at least.
I'll email you the,
Why don't we,
I can't, I can try and put it there.
why don't we, for the record, Councilmember Williams did provide in advance, a written proposed motion, and why don't we have the city clerk?
You want me to post it, or you want me to read
Oh,
it
Why don't we,
that one's a little bit long. I sent you the short one.
to me?
I emailed it.
If it's electronic, Mayor, I just would like to see it on the screen real quick.
we'll have the city clerk read it and send it to you by email.
Chris, if I email it to you, can you put it up on the screen?
Okay.
Thank you.
And we'll share it, we'll share it on the screen.
Thank you.
Okay, should be coming shortly. Stand by as we.
You got my email?
Yes, and it's been forwarded. And Mr. Kennedy, you should have that via email too. But
Okey-doke.
we're just going to,
Thank you.
there it is. Gonna move it over. There. Oh, crap, the wrong one. There you go. All right, that was it. Oh, you had it. There we go. Can you see that okay, Mr. Kennedy? Oh, 1 second.
Oh, we saw it there.
How about that? Can you see that okay? Councilmember Kennedy, can you see that?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right. So the motion, no, go down. The motion is to uphold the BZA decision with modifications to conditions in attachment B, remove conditions 12, 13, and 14, and move conditions 15 to number 12. Direct the city manager to undertake the following activities to help preserve stream flows, natural habitat, basin health. 1A, PWP will conduct an infiltration study to analyze percolation rates in stream within the project area. 1B, PWP will operate the water intake and diversion system in accordance with Fish Survey, California Department of Fish and Wildlife permits, and other regulatory requirements. 2, PWP should make renewed efforts to identify and understand the fish status within the streams and seek to support its habitat. Number 3, PWP, along with other water agencies, should explore means to recharge the Raymond Basin and provide semi-annual updates to the City Council or the Municipal Services Committee on efforts to work with RBMB, to Raymond Basin Management Board, to promote sustainability of the basin.
That's just a random BZA condition.
So that is the motion, and there is a second. Mayor, shall we?
Any discussion on the motion, Mr. Kennedy?
And where do we get an agreement from staff that the design will allow for the passage of fish? Now, I know no one possibly on the council has seen fish, but as far back as walking in that area, I saw one dead fish, a trout. But nevertheless, I'd like to understand what staff plans to do with passage.
Councilmember Kennedy, staff will comply with the Fish and Wildlife permit conditions, which we believe would dictate the design.
Okay. I think that's sufficient. Good work, Councilmember Williams. We'll see if it's going to work.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. And we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Hampton?
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
The motion is approved without opposition.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to staff and Mr. Dion, Mr. Bawa, Natalie, and also to Tim, Brick, Mr. Kules, and I think it was Mr. Bowles. With that, that matter is approved. Thank you, Ambassador Williams, for putting this together.